additional countries which aspire to join the CWA included Benin, Burkina Faso, the Gambia, and Guinea. The World Bank, African Development Bank, and IMF, the IFIs, and Germany as G20 presidency also participated. The meeting and also included was the Africa Capacity Building Foundation. The meeting provided an opportunity for the ministers to share experiences from their countries and to learn from each other on reforms related to increasing private investment, and in particular related to implementation of the CWA. The representatives of the IFIs provided overviews of the three CWA frameworks: macroeconomic, IMF, business, World Bank, and financial Africa Development Bank, and the roles that the institution plan to play in supporting implementation of the CWA consensus. The ministers expressed their strong commitment to the CWA objective of strengthening fiscal management and increasing private investment, which they noted are aligned with their own national development strategies and efforts. They expressed strong commitment to ensure rapid and robust implementation of policy commitments outlined in CWA documents from their countries. There's also strong interest among other countries to join the CWA. The ministers highlighted the historic nature of the G20 partnership with Africa and the Compact with Africa, and emphasized the importance for continuity regarding commitment to CWA as the G20 presidency rotates from year to year. From the discussions, the ministers highlighted the need for the CWA to help support national economic transformation strategies that maintain fiscal discipline and macroeconomic stability as a fundamental platform for development, diversify African economies and make them more resilient, pursue inclusive growth and reduce inequalities, focus on addressing the growing youth unemployment problem in Africa, target both domestic and foreign private investors, and take into account the regional dimensions of attracting investment and also regional infrastructural connectivity. Towards this objective within the context of the CWA, the ministers reached consensus on: 1. Domestic resource mobilization. Ministers affirmed their resolve to deepen their efforts to increase DRM. In this regard, they noted that raising additional revenues has to go hand in hand with improving the efficiency of public expenditure and delivery of public services. In effect, a compact between citizen taxpayers and their governments. Ministers highlighted the following actions: modernize tax systems and treat modernization of tax systems as an investment spending, foster peer-to-peer learning between CWA countries in DRM, bring taxpayers closer to tax administration, establish centers for that, explore ways of taxing the informal sector, but balance taxation with need to encourage innovation, deploy technology in modernizing tax administration as a build-up to a digital economy, strengthen capacity for planning and managing public investment, including PPPs. In particular, countries should consider creating capacity to prepare feasibility studies on prospective projects that could be used to attract private investment partners. Business framework. Ministers agreed on the need for a public administration that prioritizes responding to investors, both domestic and foreign, and dealing expeditiously with their concerns. In this regard, they highlighted their commitment to improve coordination with governments on improving business environment, strengthen public-private dialogue, improve legal framework to give clarity and expeditious resolution of issues for investors, strengthen investment agencies, such as providing a list of prepared feasibility projects, regional approach, push for neighbors to reform to attract FDI to regions, not just country, significantly improve their rankings in the doing business rankings. Financial framework. Ministers undertook to collaborate with the IFIs and other relevant institutions to develop and deploy de-risking financial instruments that enable African countries to attract foreign private investment without sovereign guarantees. A fundamental question to be addressed is the rising levels of debt to GDP ratios in African countries and their constraining effect on economies. There's a need to examine innovative instruments to address the debt burden so as to enable CWA countries to benefit from the relatively low global interest rate regime. Regional stock exchanges to connect countries, encouraged, need for clear financial regulatory frameworks to ensure robust domestic financial and capital markets, mobilize and leverage diaspora funding. CWA should help reflect the positive image of Africa in international financial markets. Expectations from IFIs. There's a shared expectation that the World Bank, IMF, and Africa Development Bank will develop action plans specific to the CWA commitments of each country to support key policy reforms and transformational policy agenda. Expectations from G20 countries. There is a shared expectation that the G20 countries will promote specific and meaningful investment in Africa, particularly to address the infrastructure gap. Significant G20 investment and trade promotion financing and risk mitigation are needed for the private sector to commit to new investment in Africa. The level of preparedness of the CWA countries now makes it imperative for the G20 countries to be more specific and detailed on how they will assist in attracting the required significant additional private investment to the CWA countries who are pursuing reforms and de-risking their countries. A peer learning platform for finance ministers. Ministers noted that they found the day's discussion very helpful and saw great value in building upon it to create a club/alliance that could provide a platform for ministers to continue to learn from and motivate each other in pursuing their national economic development agendas, and the CWA in particular. Such a platform will provide an opportunity to understand best practices and key challenges in Africa and learn from global best practices. To this end, ministers expressed their appreciation to the Minister of Finance for Ghana, having convened the meeting. Sorry. Thank you very much. Express the appreciation to ASSET for helping to convene and prepare substantive background material for the meeting, and requested access to be a secretary for the peer learning platform. Ministers noted a robust process of analysis and research will inform the peer-to-peer learning process. This research will draw upon analysis of the IFIs, but will also include multi-country case studies, cross-regional comparative analysis, data sourcing and surveys, and tailored macroeconomic assessments. They agreed on the need to start with a study on DRMs. Peer review mechanism. A peer review mechanism for the CWA will promote mutual accountability, provide peer learning opportunities, and serve as an honest broker mechanism for CWA countries. It will also allow for robust and real-time monitoring of progress across CWA countries. This will draw lessons from the African peer review mechanism and incorporate good practice from other experiences, for example, from the OECD. The African Center for Economic Transformation, ASSET, will, in partnership with institutions in CWA countries and with regional institutions such as the Economic Commission for Africa, the APDF, and ACBF, undertake a coordination role in CWA implementation and facilitation of the peer learning analysis and peer review interventions. Convening at the October 2017 World Bank IMF annual meeting. This consensus statement should be shared with G20 and IFIs, and an information sharing session should be organized at the 2017 World Bank IMF annual meetings. This session will provide an opportunity for CWA Ministers of Finance to share the outcomes of the ministerial meeting here today with G20 representatives and other stakeholders. Conclusion. There was strong agreement that a partnership will benefit CWA implementation. African governments, IFIs, and the G20 will work collaboratively to meet the goals of the CWA, while ASSET and other African institutions will support implementation. The ministers recognize Germany's outstanding leadership of the G20 and noted appreciation for the steadfast focus on Africa during Germany's G20 presidency. The ministers noted appreciation to the African Development Bank and the World Bank and the IMF for their participation and support to the CWA. The ministers also noted Ghana's participation. Lastly, the ministers conveyed the appreciation and thanks to all the teams in the CWA countries that are helping with implementation of this important initiative. We also recognize the countries that came and joined us, and the ministers now look forward to convening at the World Bank IMF annual meetings in Washington, D.C. in October 2017. Africa is working together again. Africa beyond aid. Let us move with courage, love for our continent, and the self-discipline to stabilize our countries. Thank you very much.